In the 2013 NHL Entry Draft, the Vancouver Canucks drafted what would become their inevitable captain in Bo Horvat after acquiring the 9th overall draft pick in a trade with the New Jersey Devils, the hometown draft-hosting New Jersey Devils. It was a trade that saw Cory Schneider leave Vancouver and Bo Horvat come into town a few minutes after the trade was made. However, the Vancouver Canucks had their own draft pick in this first round as well. It was the 24th overall draft pick, and the Vancouver Canucks used this pick to select a guy who future considerations had at 9th overall, a guy who Craig Button and TSN had at 14th overall. This is Hunter Shinkaruk, a player who a lot of Vancouver Canucks fans, myself included, were very, very excited about. He didn't pan out. Spoiler alert to the end of the story. But I wanted to make this video to acknowledge what could have been, what we were supposed to get with Shinkaruk, and how things went the way they were. When the Vancouver Canucks drafted Hunter Shinkaruk, TSN put his numbers up on the screen and a lot of Canucks fans were like, yo, this guy's a great point producer, and then they went into the scouting report part of the statistical profile they had on him as well. Taking a look at how TSN had this guy, they had him as a 4 out of 5 skating, IQ, hands, shot, and a 5 out of 5 compete level. They said his player comparison was Zach Parise, and that he would make the NHL in 2 years. They also said on the broadcast that Hunter Shinkaruk sees a lot of Patrick Kane in his game, and that, compiled with the numbers, the goals, the points, got Canucks fans very excited. After drafting this guy, a lot of fans legitimately thought we had an elite first-line potential left winger in our system. And there was a lot to support that idea. Hunter Shinkaruk was a guy who, in his draft -1 year, the year before he got drafted by the Vancouver Canucks, he had 91 points in 66 games and 49 goals with the Medicine Hat Tigers. He then got 37 goals and 86 points in 64 games the year he was drafted as the captain. The Tigers lost Emerson Edom, they lost a few other really good players, which is why he went from 49 goals to 37 goals in his draft year. After he got drafted, Hunter Shinkaruk played for the Canucks in the preseason, and in this stint, the guy absolutely shined. He had a goal early on against the San Jose Sharks where he did the 10-2 little shuffle step as he came in along the half boards. He cut in towards the net and he shot the puck over the goalie's shoulder, and it was an absolutely phenomenal play. Later on, he also had another goal on Henrik Lundqvist where he did the same 10-2 shuffle sidestep after crossing the blue line, and he ripped it by the Swedish netminder. He didn't make the team, but a lot of fans were still really impressed with what he could become. However, come late October, Hunter Shinkaruk got injured, and eventually he needed surgery that sidelined him for the entire season. This hip injury was a really big blow to the Vancouver Canucks prospect, and he only suited up for 18 total games that season. He had 16 points, which is not bad, but it was a really bad step in his development. Come the next season, though, Hunter Shinkaruk was a guy who eventually found his way on the Utica Comets in the AHL. He got 31 points in 74 games, and I specifically remember a lot of Canucks fans being somewhat disappointed with that number. A lot of people thought he would become an immediate contributor to Utica and put up just under a point per game because, yo, the guy was so good in the WHL. He's supposed to make the NHL in 2015. This guy is gonna light the world on fire in Utica, right? But he didn't do that, and Canucks fans were kind of upset. This is where the layers of doubt started to form in the minds of the collective fan base. The next season, though, he was great. Absolutely great for the Comets. 39 points in 45 games played, and he actually had a game with Vancouver too. But I remember sitting in grade 10 science class in high school, and all of a sudden at the end of class, my friend Canadian Zombie, or who is now known as Peg City Hockey on YouTube, calls out to me and he says, "Gio, the Canucks traded Shinkaruk." And that immediately set me off. I was like, yo, for what? What did they trade Shinkaruk for? This guy's supposed to be elite. This guy's supposed to be a 70, 80-point NHLer on the first line. What did they trade him for? Oh, Markus Granlund. Oh. We're not going to talk about that trade specifically in this video, but we will talk about Hunter Shinkaruk himself, because there were a few quotes that came out around this time where Jim Benning says they liked Shinkaruk, but they think they got a better two-way player in return. The deal fit well with their plans for the future. Another quote from Jim Benning says that they didn't think that Hunter Shinkaruk's goal-scoring ability would translate to the NHL or not. I remember this quote was a big meme at the time that it was said, and a lot of Canucks fans were harping on the idea that was like, yo, this guy likes to score goals. That's why we're going to trade him, because he likes to score. But obviously there was more to that. The Vancouver Canucks were looking for a two-way player in Markus Granlund, and for the most part that's what they got for a good amount of time. Shinkaruk, though, was a guy who you could debate Jim Benning made the right call, because he ended up playing a few games with the Calgary Flames. He got 3 points in 7 games in his first stint and 1 point in 7 games with his second stint, and he never played in the NHL again. He spent some time with the Stockton Heat, he was traded to Montreal for Kerby Rychel, he played with the Laval Rocket, and then he went over to the Charlotte Checkers this previous season. Had 7 points in 20 games played, and then he got a good offer from the KHL and found his way onto the Kunlun Red Star. 9 points in 19 games is what he had with Kunlun before the KHL season stopped up, but now taking a look at where Shinkaruk is and what he was supposed to become, it is somewhat disappointing to see how things turned out. Shinkaruk was a guy who a big bulk of his offensive productivity came with his effort. Less with his skills, less with his shot, and more off of his competitiveness. And as things went on throughout the NHL, the AHL, etc., we saw that competitive spirit die down year after year. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that a lot of that has to do with the injuries he suffered and the setbacks that occurred mentally. But Hunter Shinkaruk had his best AHL season playing in 2015-16. He was a guy who statistically didn't get any better even after the trade. So, it brings up a question of how he was developed, how he was able to proceed as a prospect, and whether or not the number one asset that he had, which was his competitiveness, which was his effort, his drive, if that just maybe wasn't enough. And it's unfortunate to take a look at it like that, but the guy just didn't pan out in the NHL. He was a guy who a lot of people projected NHL-like qualities, but who slid further and further in the draft. So maybe, I guess, we're in a position where now we see why. Maybe Jim Benning was right the entire time, that the way he scores, the way he produces, is not translatable to the next step. But with that in mind, I just want to say that I hope Hunter Shinkaruk has a crazy good KHL career. I hope he becomes as much of a cult star he can be with the Kunlun Red Star. That would be amazing, because I've always been a fan of Hunter Shinkaruk, a guy who can produce numbers like crazy back in junior. A guy who did the Ulf Dahlin 10-2 shuffle a few times in preseason games. It's actually kind of funny because Ray Ferraro talked about that 10-2 shuffle when Shinkaruk did it, and he mentioned Ulf Dahlin, and Ulf Dahlin is the father of Jonathan Dahlin, who the Vancouver Canucks also had in their system for a moment. So it's a very interesting little connection that we can make there. But comment down below everything you think about Hunter Shinkaruk. What were your thoughts on the trade when it happened? What were your thoughts on Shinkaruk as a prospect when he was drafted? How excited were you for this guy? Because I know I was incredibly excited. But at the end of the day, it just didn't work out. That has been the first episode here of What Could Have Been, a series where we take a look at prospects who didn't really pan out the best ways that they could have. I hope you enjoyed this video, such that I trust 99, and bye.